So I'm going to talk about jump cancelling. It's this kind of mechanical exploit that's used in I Want to Be the Guy fan games, which are made in Game Maker 8 and Game Maker Studio. This game, RITE, is made in Game Maker Studio 2, so it has some similarities. But so far I've found only one of the jump cancel styles used in fan games actually carries over to this game. So when you jump in platformers, your vertical speed is set to something, say 20, and I go straight up, and then gravity applies, say, -2 to my vertical speed every frame. So frame 2 it's 18, and then 16, and then 14, and eventually it hits 0, and that's the peak, and then I start coming down. But you don't always have to full jump, and in this game there's variable jump heights. Jump cancelling is a method to get a very, very small jump. Not that big, but even smaller. That small. 2 background tiles, if you do it well. Whereas if I try and tap as little as possible, the lowest I can usually get is about 3 background tiles. That's me tapping the key for as short a time as possible. So what happens is when you release the jump button that you've pressed, the game detects that and divides your upward momentum so that you start traveling a lot slower instantly upwards. And so it takes much shorter time for gravity to actually flip around your vertical momentum and bring you back down. So that's how it's calculated usually in platformers. And Hollow Knight, for example, if you've played it, has a very... he kind of rockets upwards, and then as soon as you release jump, he starts coming back downwards pretty much immediately and very quickly compared to other platformers like Celeste. And that's because it divides your upward momentum by a lot, and gravity is quite, it accelerates you quickly downwards. But so how the jump cancel works is that you have 2 keys that are read by the game to be the same jump button. It doesn't work if you use, say, W, space, J, and up, which are all at the top right there in the diagram, marked as the native jump keys. So I can't jump cancel with W and space. It just won't work. They're not the same in terms of the game. So what that means is that you need some kind of external rebind to do this. And that in most communities might be seen as, like illegal, against the rules, externally rebinding to do an exploit, but it's not scripting, it's just rebinding because the game doesn't let you rebind. Typically in fan games, because shift is the jump key by default, you can use left shift and right shift, which most keyboards have, left shift and right shift. If you had 2 space bars, you could do it in this game. If you had 2 up arrows, you could easily do this. So that's the only thing stopping it from being viable natively. But so, because there's no rebinding, you need to go external, either using auto hotkey for keyboards or some other scripting. And then for controller, you would use Steam Big Picture or DS for Windows or X360. And what you do is rebind 2 of your buttons to the same, like W, or let's just say space. So I have S and D on my keyboard, both bound to space by auto hotkey. So what you do is when you press jump 1, your first copy of it, it performs a jump, but you still hold down the key. And then if you tap and release jump 2, nothing happens. And that's because the game is already seeing that jump 1 is held down. You hold down jump 2, and the game doesn't react because, well, why would it? You're already holding the jump button down. There's no reason to jump. But when you release jump 2, then it releases, jump. The game's jump. You're not holding the jump button anymore. So then if you were to press jump 2 a second time, you would get a jump. I'm pressing the wrong button. So hold jump 1, tap jump 2 does nothing. And then hold jump 2, you get a full jump. Hold jump 1, tap jump 2, tap jump 2 and you get a smaller jump. That's the same as usual. And I can release jump 1 afterwards. But how jump cancelling would work is you need to first hold down jump 1, tap jump 2 to kind of clear the key state to tell the game that, oh, it's in the up state rather than the down pressed state. So now you're free to jump again. And what you're aiming to do is press jump 2, and you can hold it or you can tap it, doesn't matter. And then as soon as you press jump 2, you release jump 1, and that stunts your vertical momentum as soon as possible after you jump. So it's basically like you're setting your vertical speed to 20, or whatever the number is, and then the next frame, or even on the same frame, I'm not sure how the game does it, it divides it in half. So you get this tiny jump. And you can get as small as 2 background tiles with this, as far as I know. If you do it, you know, like 1 frame after the other directly, which I'm evidently not very good at. But it's tech. Oh, there you go. It's tech, and fan gamers can have it pretty consistent with shift canceling, they call it, where they just press 1 shift at the same time they release the other, and they get this tiny hop. So there's no reason why we couldn't get it consistent. They're on 50 FPS, this game's 60, so it's a little disadvantage. But still, you can get some pretty small hops. Now, where would this be useful? Well, say there's a saw blade here, where I'm running, and there's a roof up here to the right. And I'm gonna go to the right and jump for some sick beeline across the screen. I'm going to try and weave my way between the saw blade and the roof. But the problem is if I use a normal jump, I bonk on the roof and then I go into the saw blade. Whereas if I use cancelling, I can go between them safely. And when I was trying it out earlier, I actually got across this gap, I think, with some generous coyote frames and pretty good cancel. But so this could probably be used in some places in the game. I haven't gone through the game yet to check them all, but you know, I'm sure there are some places. And I do have a couple of other ideas of like tech that we can use to cheat some screens a little bit, but I'll have to test it out. So anyway, one thing I haven't tried, which in fan games is called cactus cancelling, is where you have jump 1, jump 2, and jump 3. And so what happens is you perform a jump with jump 3. On the frame after that, you release jump 2. It, say, halves your vertical speed, but it still takes a few frames for you to arc your jump because of gravity on every frame applying. So you release jump 2, halves your speed, and then you release jump 1 the frame after that, and that halves your speed from what it was. So it's like, to get these really mini jumps, you would have multiple shift keys, up to 4 or 5, I think. I'm not an expert on it, but these insane people do this. And they kind of like make a wave with their fingers as they release them off the keys after pressing jump with one of them. It's kind of really hard to do, even just on my table, but that's what they do. And maybe it works here too. Maybe you can get a jump that's smaller than 2 tiles. I'm not sure. Or maybe it will make it more consistent if you use multiple binds to the same jump and try to cactus cancel every time you go for a usual cancel and get a tiny jump. But yeah, I think that's about it. Did I talk about rebinding? Yeah, in the future, depending on how the dev implements it, you should be able to do this as well, I think. Maybe not for controllers, but for keyboards, if you bind jump to shift, the game in the future, he might set it up to either detect it as left shift and right shift, or maybe just a general unspecified shift. And if it's an unspecified shift, you can use left and right shift as the same button as the game interprets it. So we'll have to see how that goes if he does add rebinds. But yeah, for now, externally rebinding is the only option to achieve this. Unless you do have 2 spaces or 3 spaces on your keyboard or any of duplicates of the other keys. But yeah, hopefully it wasn't too long. I think that's about all I need to say on jump cancelling in this game.